It has been a busy few weeks in the endurance racing world. We are here to break down everything that happened from IMSA to WEC, ELMS, GT World Challenge. Who's on the rise? Who overperformed? Who underperformed? Stick around to find out as we sum up everyone's favorite endurance series and races. My name is Sebi.
And I'm Tereza.
And this is the Everything Endurance Racing podcast.
That was a very nice intro, Sebi. I'm glad that the roles reversed for this episode.
First try as well.
Yeah, we're so back.
We are.
But let's kick this off, shall we? Do we start with the World Endurance Championship?
Absolutely. That's the most recent race we had just yesterday. At the time of recording yesterday.
At the time of recording yesterday, at the time of publishing 4 days ago.
Something like that.
Yeah. We had Imola, the 6 hours of Imola. What a race. How happy are you with the results?
I'm decently content with the results. We had a Mick podium, which was super cool for me because I'm still a huge Mick fan. The Alpine is very good at the moment, and I hope they can continue their upwards trend. Tereza also has something to say about that.
See, on the Mick podium, you're a big fan of Mick, and in the same car, Jules Gounod and Fred Makowiecki, which I'm personally a big fan of both, Jules Gounod especially, and we're gonna get to him in this episode as well. So yeah, Alpine are they're so good. Not the best, right? But as opposed to last year, I'm genuinely very impressed by the pace that they have been showing.
It was only a 6-hour race, so we're gonna see how long the Mechachrome engine lasts them in longer races, because we know that it's still not the most reliable engine. If you just look at Formula 2, where they will still have engines blowing up left, right, and center. But maybe they fix it. I'm very hopeful that they're gonna survive in the 24-hour, and especially in a few weeks at the Spa 6-hour.
Yeah.
Where we're also gonna be Everything Endurance Racing meetup at Spa, everyone.
Yeah, I'm super excited for Spa, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Ferrari, they won from pole position, and they didn't mess it up, because last year, I don't know if you remember, if you listeners remember, but last year Ferrari had a hat trick in qualifying, 1, 2, 3, and then in the race they were leading, right? They were first, second, third, they were doing really well, but then rain happened. It started raining on the track, and they called all 3 of their cars into the pits to get their tires changed, and they completely messed it up. It was a proper Maranello circus, and
Classic Ferrari style there.
Classic Ferrari, and they basically handed their win to Toyota, and then the Porsche Penske number 6 was second. And this year they pulled through, got a cutesy first place.
Yeah, very strong results from Ferrari. Their GT3 cars weren't. Yeah, they were in the mix, but nothing major. Their hypercar team is definitely on the rise at the moment, and they look really strong. Like, they were, in terms of balance of performance, they got the biggest hit after the last race, and somehow they still just pushed through it, and that car can unlock so much performance. It's ridiculous.
No words. Like, in the GT3, I'm a little bit disappointed, but the Ferrari hypercar pulled through, and 2 wins in a row. I'm quite surprised. Do you think that they took it to heart after everyone said, winning Le Mans is one thing, but if you really want to prove that you're good, win the championship? Do you think that they pulled to on that one? That they're maybe prioritizing winning the championship and Le Mans this year?
I think they're just prioritizing winning everything, really. It's Ferrari. They always want to win. There is no second place for Ferrari. If you don't win, you're lost. That's the Ferrari mentality. It has always been like that. So they want to win. Yes.
That's one thing. But also, last week I spoke to Alessio Rovera at the GT World Challenge, who races in the GT3 in WEC. And I asked him about GT World Challenge specifically, which we're going to get to. But he said that if he had to prioritize either winning Spa or the championship overall, he would prioritize spa 24 hours. And he said that that's kind of the mentality they have at Ferrari in GT3, prioritizing the biggest endurance race over the whole championship in terms of, setup, training, and stuff like that.
Well, fair point, I guess. But like, hard to compare like winning GT3 to winning
That's true.
LMDH or LMH, because there was really WEC is the only series that the Ferrari competes in. Unfortunately, I wish they were in IMSA, and I hope they join IMSA at some point because it would be an amazing addition to the American racing series.
That would be. I would honestly love to see all of the LMH manufacturers do IMSA as well, like Peugeot, for example. I think, I think the
Peugeot would have to
American
slap on a Dodge badge or something on the car though to race in IMSA.
through that, but I think their car would, the way they just handle things would suit American tracks way better than the European tracks they
Yeah,
race at.
because like Peugeot doesn't exist in the US.
It doesn't. um, Porsche. That's a topic because they're not doing that well as
No,
opposed to last year.
they're not.
That last year they were absolutely dominating, and this year it's bad. I'm gonna say it like that.
Yeah, they took a big performance hit from compared to last year. I hope they can find their pace again in their car, because like it's in IMSA they're showing amazing results with the same car. Well, basically the same car. But in WEC they have been kind of lacking this year. We'll see. Hopefully they can come back strong. Same with Cadillac. Let's talk about that, because I know you don't want
I
to
think
talk about it and you skipped over it.
I was gonna say something about Porsche, but we can get back to that Cadillac. So, Cadillac x Jota, right? Such a hyped up partnership, and I genuinely thought it was gonna go really well because Jota is sharing loads and loads of data with Action Express, which is the team that Whelen Cadillac that runs the Cadillac entry in IMSA. So they're sharing a lot of data. They're quite literally sharing a driver. Earl Bamber is doing both the entire season of IMSA and the entire season of WEC. They're doing so much testing. They have really good drivers. The lineups I thought were quite good as well. In the number 12, we've got Alex Lynn, Will Stevens, and Norman Nato. And in the 38, we got Sebastian Bourdais, Earl Bamber, and Jensen Button. Really good lineups, loads of training, loads of sharing of engineering, expertise, car setups, etc. And their last in Qatar, they had a really great start. They were really strong. They were the only, I would say, the only opposition to Ferrari. There's no one else who would be on their level. And then they eliminated themselves through driver error, which you can debate whatever you want. I think it was the fault of both. I think Jensen Button did brake a little too early, and yes, Alex Lynn crashed into him from the back. I would not defend Alex Lynn completely, as many have been doing, because if you remember, just a lap before that, Lynn had a questionable radio where he said that he's not gonna take it easy, that he is gonna push on Jensen Button because he wants to win the race, blah blah blah. So very questionable incident, which basically eliminated both Cadillacs. And yesterday, or like a few days ago when you're hearing this podcast, they just didn't have the pace. They didn't have the pace. Earl Bamber, in a traditional fashion, had a little moment, two little moments with the Peugeot. The first time the Peugeot hit him, basically, but he recovered quite well. The Peugeot was under investigation, got a penalty, and then the penalty got retrieved back, so the Peugeot didn't have a penalty. And then, very similarly, Bamber hit the same Peugeot a few laps later, like an hour
Was it the
later.
same Peugeot or was it the other Peugeot?
It was the same Peugeot, I
That's
think.
hilarious.
And the Peugeot spun. It was Loic Duval behind the
Yeah,
wheel. So,
right.
oh, Earl, yeah. So Earl Bamber got a penalty, a drive-through penalty, which I think is absolutely insane that he did. And yeah, so they eliminated themselves, and they just didn't have the pace. And I'm really sad about it because I genuinely feel like Cadillac has the potential. It's a really good hypercar. They have really good drivers. They're putting a lot of effort into it, but they just and it's mostly just driver errors as well,
Yeah.
which like in Qatar they could have won. They could have easily won if they didn't eliminate themselves. And yesterday as well, there were so many driver mistakes, and I don't know if it's like the combinations of the drivers or the fact that some of the drivers are inexperienced or maybe a combination of factors, but
It's probably, as always, a combination of factors. And it's also the first season that Jota is entering that car because they previously ran the Porsche hypercar in World Endurance Championship. And like it is hard to compare these cars against each other because they use completely different chassis. The Porsche is based on the Multimatic chassis, and the Cadillac is, I think, using the Lara, if I'm not mistaken.
yes, I think so. You caught me off guard here.
Yeah, where is
But
it? Porsche. Yeah, Porsche is using Multimatic, and Cadillac is using the Lara chassis. We will also come
yeah.
back to that in a moment.
It's it's just really sad. But speaking of Porsche, I also wanted to say because when we talked about Porsche and their lack of performance in WEC specifically, I think a lot of that has to do that last season they had Andrea Lotterer and Fred Makowiecki, and those two drivers were there when they were developing the hypercar.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
got that it wasn't Kevin Estre developing the hypercar. It wasn't Lorenz Vantor developing the hypercar. It was not Mike Campbell. It was not Mathieu Jaminet. It was not Michael Christensen. It was Andrea Lotterer and Fred Makowiecki who put down the building blocks, who put down most of the effort and most of the basics when building the hypercar and developing the hypercar. And I think it's quite sad that they got rid of them. Obviously, they weren't the strongest drivers, but compared to last year, I'm sorry, but Andrea Lotterer last year was driving way better than Lorenz Van Dort this year, first of all. Second, it just you can't get rid of both of your drivers that developed the car and expect everything to still be running perfectly, right?
yeah. No,
Like
that's not
Cadillac
gonna
is doing
work.
it as well, that they're kind of step by step getting rid of the drivers that helped develop the hypercars, for example, Scott Dixon, but they're still keeping some of them drivers like Alex Lynn or Earl
Mhm.
Bamper, as previously mentioned. So I think that's a big mistake on Porsche's side because I don't think a driver who didn't develop the hypercar can give you as great feedback as perhaps a driver who helped develop the car, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat here. But like at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a customer car where everyone should be able to eh, get similar performance out of the car, and it's a kind of spec car. And the only other Porsche entry in um WEC with Proton. No, is it Proton? Yeah,
It's Proton.
Proton with Proton also isn't doing too great. Side note, don't paint your car green. It's not gonna work. It's
As we
the
have seen in the Lamborghini.
Yeah, the Lamborghini was slow. The Proton Porsche is slow, and so are the two Aston Martins, unfortunately. Okay, it's their first season, and both of the cars actually made it to the finish line. They were only a lap down, and it still sounds amazing. But I hope they can find performance in that car somewhere because it's just such a pretty car and it sounds so good, and I can't wait to hear it at Spa.
It's a very new entry, as we have discussed. It's their first season. It's their second race in WEC, so maybe they'll get there. Obviously, they're taking it, some time. But let's be honest here. Alpine last year, first season in WEC as a hypercar, technically, also not that good.
Yeah,
BMW really struggled. Everyone who debuts, like their debut season is not the best. And it's just Aston Martin is in a very unprivileged position, let's say, because they're the only hypercar that is making their debut this year. Whereas last year we had a bunch of hypercars debuting, right? So yeah.
excuse me.
So yeah, but speaking of debutants, if you will, we have three
Well,
hypercar programs.
before we touch on that, we still have to talk about BMW really quickly. They're all right.
Okay.
They finally figured out their car, and it's showing some good performance. in hypercar, which is good, at least in WEC. IMSA is a different story. Um, and their GT drivers have been committing some absolute crimes this weekend. Both of the BMW GT3s or GTLMs were involved in some kind of incident, with one of them completely punting out an Aston Martin in a very spectacular crash, and Valentino Rossi spinning out a Ferrari in the other car and still ending up winning in GTLM, despite, didn't they not? Who won GTLM? Second place. Okay, I got a podium in GTLM. I don't have the
Porsche.
results in my
Porsche
head.
Manthey won.
Did they?
Porsche Manthey won in GP3.
After
Yeah,
absolutely
it was that.
butchering qualifying.
It was a fight till the last lap, quite
Yeah,
literally on
right.
the last lap. Kelvin van der Linde was pushing to win in the number 46, but it was Porsche that maintained the position. But it was really cool. I recommend you watch maybe the last 1 or 2 laps of the GT3 battle in WEC if you haven't seen it, because it was
This was good. It was
amazing. I would
very
say
good. GT
those
battles
2 laps,
this race was very good in general.
like rarely do you have the GT3 category having more exciting racing than LMDH, but I would say this weekend it was like this.
It
The
was very
LMDH,
close.
the hypercar, hypercar fight was there, but it was very obvious that
Kind
it's
of
just gonna go
aided by
by.
GT sometimes, by traffic, because Imola is very narrow to race, especially in these kinds of cars. With multi-class, it's not really that well suited to multi-class, but it makes for some spicy action on track when the LMH or the hypercars get stuck behind our GT traffic. Um, yeah,
But now let's spill the tea on the newcomers, the debutants, as I said, because we've got a lot of speculations that are being thrown around, and we ourselves did a cutesy little analysis ahead of this podcast. So we're gonna talk about that because there's a lot to discuss. We've got the 3 new hypercars announced. In 2026, we will have the Genesis hypercar announced, which coming to WEC. And in 2027, it's gonna come to IMSA. And in 2027, we're gonna have a McLaren and a Ford hypercar. All 3 are gonna be LMDH cars. McLaren is confirmed to be LMDH, Genesis is confirmed to be an LMDH, and Ford, one might assume, naturally come to the conclusion that it's going to be an LMDH as well.
because
It
it's just
probably
cheaper and
It's
way
just
more
not
cost
officially
efficient
confirmed, but
to run.
yeah, it's not officially confirmed, but like it's pretty much obvious.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe do we want to start with the McLaren?
Yeah, we can. The McLaren is speculated to be based on a Delara chassis. That's the same chassis that BMW have been semi-successfully using, and it's no surprise that it's probably going to be run by United Autosport, because who knew Zach Brown is also invested in United Autosport, and United Autosport has been entering most, if not all, of the McLaren entries in GT in GTLM, and also a lot of entries in IMSA in previous years. So it's definitely going to be United Autosports.
Yeah, and I actually have a little rumor about that as well. I'm writing a big feature article about it, so make sure to read it. It's probably gonna come out by the time this podcast comes out. But yeah, allegedly, James Barkley, the team boss of Jaguar TCS Racing in Formula E, is leaving Jaguar at the end of this season. And this is very important because this rumor then, has 2 branches. And he's leaving to explore a new opportunity within motorsport. Rumor A says that it's to do rally with Land Rover, which is completely irrelevant to our podcast. Or rumor B says that he's going to be the new team boss of McLaren hypercar program, which I think would be insanely cool because he basically built Jaguar Racing in Formula E from nothing to the greatness that they are now. He spent 12 years, 10 seasons with this team. And
Has it
one could
already been
assume.
this much time in Formula E? Jesus Christ. I still
and
remember watching the first Formula E race, but that's a
and
story for a different podcast.
that is, yeah. Where was I? Yeah. And if he goes to McLaren, we can already assume some drivers going there. First of all, Sam Bird, current Formula E McLaren driver, has been very vocal about the fact that he wants to develop the hypercar, that he wants to race the hypercar. He's done a few GTE, which is the predecessor to LMGT3 in WEC races. He's been quite active there. He's been in Formula E only lately, though, but I think it would be cool if he was in the hypercar. And naturally, one could assume that Mitch Evans is going to go with, because let's be honest, Mitch Evans is quite a personal project of James Berkeley, and I think it would be really cool if he came back to endurance racing, because he did 2 races with LMP2, one with SMP Racing in Spa 6 hours, and then the other in the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2015, where he got second place. So, I think that would be really cool. But yeah, that's only a speculation right now, but I think it's a really cool speculation that might have a bit of truth.
Yeah.
Make sure to check my article when it comes out, because I do talk about this in great detail.
Oh, exactly. So, just one quick thing on the McLaren again. It is speculated, which is not really a surprise, to be using a V6 twin-turbo engine, the same one as found in their most recent road cars, i.e. the McLaren Artura and the Speedtail is V8, but the V6 twin-turbo from their most recent cars. So it's not gonna be sounding the best, but it's a reliable engine, and it's a good little engine. That's gonna be powering those cars. Moving on to, I guess, Ford.
Yeah, so with Ford, I'm gonna leave the technicalities of the chassis, engine, and everything to you, of course. But with Ford, we don't know anything. We basically have nothing confirmed about this program except for the fact that
That
it's
it's
gonna exist.
happening. Yeah.
That it's happening. That's the only confirmation we have. See, I think that the drivers involved are going to be Chris Mees and Mike Rockenfeller, because they've been with Ford for a while now. And I feel like those are the two that have the most experience along the lines of Ford drivers. Obviously, then there's David Schumacher. But then again, I don't think if you're developing a hypercar, I don't think you want David Schumacher or Arjun Maini to be the ones who are developing the hypercar. I
Well,
think
Ayun
if I,
maybe. Ayun
yeah, Arjun
Ayun
maybe.
has some good experience by now.
Yeah, but still, I feel like if you have Chris Mees and Mike
Yeah, it's
Rockenfeller,
probably gonna be
Airhead,
Mizzy and Rookie.
an obvious choice.
Yeah.
Obvious choice. So I think it's gonna be those two who are gonna be the ones to lay the building blocks for this hypercar. But then again, we got nothing confirmed. We don't know the team. Though, as we discussed ahead of this podcast, we think it's gonna be probably Proton competition, because they're currently running the Fords in the GT3 category in WEC. In GT World Challenge is HRT, but I don't really think that HRT is gonna be the team to run the Fords, but obviously who knows? And then also
Something
Proton
I've completely forgot, like a team that I completely forgot that does stuff with Ford. M-Sport. M-Sport is also
Yeah.
a likely option to enter in WEC if it won't end up being Proton. But since the customer LMDH and LMH cars are likely gonna be dropped very soon due to the increasing number of cars that are
And yeah, you're right. And Proton is running the Porsche customer hypercar in WEC. So they already have experience running a hypercar. So I think it's obvious it's a very relevant choice for Ford to make for Proton to run their
yeah, and
hypercar.
they do the GT program in WEC, so very logic choice. And the chassis is probably also gonna be a very, very logic choice, which is Multimatic. Ford has been working with Multimatic for decades. Multimatic has been building Mustangs. They have been building GT cars for Ford. They have built the most famous, incredible Ford GTE, which is still one of my favorite cars to ever race because it looked like a freaking absolute monster of a car and was crazy fast in WEC. And yeah, so Multimatic, pretty much obvious choice there as well. And engine, I'm pretty sure is going to be like the same engine that they used in the GTE, which was a V6 EcoBoost twin turbo or whatever they're calling it.
Crazy. Um, Genesis That's one of my favorite topics right now. Um, Genesis has two confirmed drivers, and that's Pippo Derani, who helped develop the Cadillac hypercar, and Andrea Lotterer, who helped develop the Porsche hypercar. So I'd just like to say this is the first brand, the first hypercar entry that has two drivers confirmed that have already developed a hypercar before. So we're already kind of like, this category is still growing, but we're getting drivers who have already done this once before. So I think Genesis, in that sense, has a major advantage as opposed to basically any other hypercar because they've got two drivers that already know what they're doing.
Yeah, and Genesis is like, it's not that obvious because it's called Genesis, but Hyundai in the background also has tons of experience in motorsports. Not necessarily in sports car racing yet, but they have crazy amounts of money. They're an Asian manufacturer, so we know they're gonna put everything they have into this program. Same as Toyota with Gazoo Racing. Um, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be very good, and I'm pretty sure their home base for the European races will be at the Nürburgring as well because Hyundai has a huge base at the Nürburgring, or it's gonna be at
Their home
IDEX
base is
Sports.
at it's IDEX Sport. Their home base is at IDEX Sport at Puerto Ricard. That's already
Fair
been
enough.
confirmed. Their races there because Puerto Ricard is technically a race is a testing track, which
Yeah,
we're gonna get to in a bit as well. But I think it's a really good place where to have the base. So that's the first thing. But also, as you said, very experienced people. It's OG F1 fans. Is it okay to say OG at this point?
I don't
Because it's
know.
not that long.
What's the series called? Pre Drive to
Drive
Survive,
to Survive.
maybe.
Pre-Drive to Survive or early season 1 Drive to season 1, season 2 Drive to Survive fans might know Cyril Abiteboul, right? Former boss of Renault F1 Racing. And he's going to be the boss of Genesis. He is the boss of Genesis Hypercar program, which I think is insanely cool because he did Hyundai Rally and now he's doing this. And I feel like they couldn't have taken a better person to
No,
be the boss
no,
of
that's
this
gonna be
program.
a
Like
very,
this,
very good, successful team. And they
and
also have the chassis to back everything up. It's an Orica chassis. They're using the same chassis that Acura and Alpine are using, so it's a very proven chassis. They can talk to, maybe get some information from the other cars. Acura has been pretty good in IMSA, not this season so much, but that's a different story. And Alpine is also very much on the rise, and we'll see how they manage to make changes to the chassis, because both the Acura and the Alpine didn't necessarily have many changes made to the overall aerodynamic efficiency of the car. There's like a drag coefficient rule that you have to follow to build an LMDH. It's, long story short, the Orica is too efficient to run an LMDH by itself, so they usually just slap on a lot of drag. But it's a good chassis, and it's probably the best chassis they could have chosen for the program.
And in terms of preparation for their big debut next year, they're doing an entry in the European Le Mans Series, an LMP2 car. And what's most interesting to note is that they've got Jamie Chadwick in the car.
Jamie.
And it was, yeah, and she's doing amazing. And it was also supposed to be Logan Sargent, right?
Yeah.
And Logan Sargent. And these two, there's also a third driver, but he's not really linked to Genesis Magma Racing. But it was supposed to be Jamie Chadwick and Logan Sargent being like, the main preparation for the Genesis hypercar. But then Logan Sargent out of nowhere announced that he's leaving racing as a whole. And they took Danny Juncadella to uh to race instead of him. And Danny Juncadella, might I just say, incredible driver, incredible experience as well. Did DTM Class 1, Mercedes factory driver, current Corvette factory driver, current Aston Martin F1 simulator driver. He's also doing some like Lamborghini GT3 stuff on the Nordschleife right now. He's a really, really good driver. And I genuinely think that Genesis are gonna consider him for the full hypercar seat, because you have 6 seats essentially in WEC, right, for hypercar, and they've got Pippo Derani and they've got Andrea Lotterer. And now the question is Jamie Chadwick gonna make it into the hypercar? Because there has been a woman who has tested a hypercar before, and that's Lilou Vadou in the Ferrari. But there has been no other woman that would come close to the hypercar. And I think out of all of them girlies racing, Jamie Chadwick is the strongest one. And I think making a little bridge from work to our next topic, ELMS, because we had the first ELMS race, right, a few weeks ago. They won in their LMP2 category. They were absolutely unbeatable. They qualified 8th, but they won the race. And Jamie Chadwick had very similar lap times to Danny Juncadella, which I don't know if it to attribute it to the fact that Danny Juncadella had his LMP2 debut, but then again, Jamie Chadwick did as well. Or I don't know, but they had very similar lap times and they were both extremely strong. So my very long question to you, Sebi, do you think we can see Jamie Chadwick in the hypercar and or Danny Juncadella as well?
Well, I would certainly hope so that we're getting female drivers and at like the top of racing. It would be fantastic. Jamie has definitely shown that she's a very fast driver. I was kind of hoping that Dorian would be the first female to drive a hypercar, but she's occupied with um, F1 Academy now. So Jamie, if they actually want to have a female driver in their car, Jamie's the obvious choice. And Daniel Huncadella is also it's time for him to step up into top classes of racing and away from GT3.
I agree. And well, on the topic of ELMS, we're just gonna quickly go through that. But LMP2, though, is a master class from IDEC Sport and Genesis. LMP3, I wrote into my notes, was a proper dentist conference because it was chaotic in a way only dentists can make it. But then GT3 was an interesting one because in the World Endurance Championship, the Iron Dames are not the strongest car. They're not. Let's be honest, they're not that good. And
No,
it's really sad.
unfortunately.
But in ELMS, they won the race.
Yeah. Balance of performance also plays a huge role. But like the WEC entry is kind of hindered by Celia Marta at this point, which is unfortunate because she's a fantastic driver as well. But she was not performing well this weekend. And as soon as the other two drivers were in the car, they were much faster, and she needs more experience in that car. I hope they can put her in the simulator more or do more testing.
But in the ELMS, Celia Matan did the longest stint for Iron Dames. She did like 2 hours
Yeah.
in the 4-hour race. And she was really good. I was really surprised. But then again, listen, I really don't want to belittle this achievement because I'm a huge Iron Dames fan and I think it's absolutely amazing that they won the race. However, if you look at the GT3 grid and the drivers in the GT3 grid, I think they only have one proper like opposition, one real opponent, let's say, and that is the Iron Lynx Mercedes car. And the Mercedes is a great car. The Mercedes is a great GT3, but it's very outdated. It's one of the older ones. That's first. And second, specifically within the Iron Lynx lineup, it's Matteo Cairoli, who I thought was going to be a very weak driver, but he keeps proving weekend by weekend that he's actually really strong. So this is my formal apology to Matteo Cairoli because he's actually way better than I thought he was going to be. And like, I'm genuinely impressed. And also Fabian Chilet is in the car. And Fabian Chilet is a great Mercedes driver. And I will never stop with Fabian Chilet propaganda, but like, he's genuinely a really good driver. And it's kind of sad that their only opposition in Elms, the only opposition to Iron Dames is Matteo Cairoli and Fabian Schiller, and they would have won the race. But then Mercedes had a technical failure, and Fabian Schiller didn't even get to drive the car in the race. So
Classic Mercedes. Everything that works in a Mercedes is built by Renault.
yeah. Now, IMSA. We had
IMSA.
long, which technically is not an endurance race because it was 100 minutes and it's technically classified as a sprint race, but that means nothing. And we also have the 12 hours of Sebring. I don't think we talked about that on the podcast yet.
Not really.
So
We were doing our IMSA episode just before 12-hour Sebring.
yeah, so we can talk about both, touch up
Uh,
on both.
I don't have any remembrance from Sebring because I didn't have time
The
to watch the
Porsche one.
race. Porsche one, yeah. Porsche is good in IMSA. They're not at WEC, but they're good in IMSA. Even though it's
They're
basically the
insanely good
same
in
team,
Insta.
which
Three
is funny.
win, 3 wins in 3 races. That's
Yeah.
absolute crazy.
And
And the
not
same
just
car
in,
as
in,
him.
in Hypercar, they're also absolutely dominating GT with their driver lineups and with Rexy.
Insane. They're so good. And like my favorite thing is that I think it very much has to do with the fact that they put Felipe Nasser and Nick Tandy into the same car. The two probably most underrated hypercar drivers ever. Like Nick Tandy is just now getting the hype he deserves, but they're so like very underrated but really great drivers.
Yeah, for sure. Who's doing all right in IMSA, I guess, is BMW. They keep showing strong one-lap performance, but then they just completely fall off during the race. And BMW has not been very happy with the performance that they've been showing in the races. So the contract with RLL, Ray Hall Lanigan Letterman Racing, literal tongue twister, is ending anyways at the end of the season, and there has been talks of them closing in on new partnerships with either Chip Ganassi Racing or Pratt and Miller Motorsports, both very renowned teams in the endurance space. We will see what happens because not seeing RLL running BMWs will be insane. They have been partnering with BMW since the good old times of the greatest BMW GT3 car to ever exist, the Z4 GT3. So we'll see how that plays out. You want to talk about Cadillac in IMSA?
Listen, it's the same. I mean, they're a tad bit better in IMSA. Like the Whelan is really good. They were very unfortunate incident in Daytona, P4 in Sebring, P4 in Long Beach. They're good. They have a really good lineup. They have kind of like a rotating lineup of Jack Aitken, Frederick Vesti, Felipe Dragovich, and Earl Bamber. And I think they're doing it really well. But it's P4, it's not the podium. And I really, really this year, I really want to see Cadillac on a podium. A podium. Like at this point, just please. Because they really do deserve it. They put so much effort into that program, and I feel like that program is doing really well. But like last year in WEC, they didn't get a single podium. They were one of the 2-3 manufacturers that didn't get a podium. And even though they were strong in qualifying, they didn't get a podium. And this year it's just the same story everywhere. And 2 P4s in IMSA, I feel like is a great start. But it's not the podium. So that's about all I can say about Cadillac.
Yeah, what also hasn't been on the podium this season in IMSA is the quality of the streams. We talked about how good the streaming quality of
I
IMSA
think we jinxed it. We
usually is,
jinxed it.
but it has been kind of meh this year. The commentary hasn't been great. The quality of the streams itself hasn't been great. There has also been a bit of a reshuffling because they now stream on YouTube as well, where previously they only stream on their own platform. So let's hope they fix it throughout the season, and I really hope they do because usually the coverage has been amazing in the past, especially because it's free without any ads. So let's hope they fix it.
I'm a little sad about it because they don't really show the major moments, right? They don't really show replays. They don't really show moments. The commentators are really
Yeah,
confused.
that's partly due to who does the broadcast. That's Peacock or NBC
Yeah.
in the US, and they have a track record of just being shit. And the American market is very much suffering as well because while most of the world can just watch the race for free, in the US they stream or they broadcast on some of the race on NBC, but the rest of the race is then on Peacock, and you have to switch between the stream and their app and the TV. It's shit, and it shows in the international feed that us international viewers get to see as well.
Yeah, totally agree. But last on our list to cover is the GT World Challenge, which had their first race of the season last weekend at Paul Ricard in the south of France. And I was there. I was trackside working. And
Frankreich, oui, oui, baguette,
yeah, exactly. Croissant. It
croissant.
was so nice. The racing was amazing. We had a 6-hour race, which started at 6 p.m. and ended at midnight. So we had some night racing. It was really cold and it was raining, and I caught a cold if anyone's interested. And I was sick for the next 5 days, which included a cutesy trip to Monaco. And also I was sick in Monaco. So
Basic racetrack experience, getting sick.
yeah, like honestly, between the two of us, like everything endurance racing powered by getting sick at every single race we
Yeah,
attend. Like quite literally.
always.
So which is gonna be fun because I personally got a race weekend every 2 weeks now. I'm leaving for a race this week. By the time that you hear this, I'm gonna be packing for another race to go to. So fun times. However, GT World Challenge was quite crazy, but also not crazy. Like I don't know how to describe it because it was a very eventful race. But then again, we had no safety cars in those 6 hours, which it's super rare for a race where there's 56 GT3 cars.
Yeah, it shows that there's a lot of pros racing, like not the huge big names, but lots of gold drivers in GT World Challenge this year, and it definitely shows in the quality of racing. Because you can have amazing quality of racing without safety cars if you have drivers that can put up a show without crashing into each other, and it really showed this weekend or last weekend in GT World Challenge.
Yes. And we had Mercedes on pole, Mercedes Winward, the Mamba, Maro Engel, Matteo Cairoli, and Lucas Auer.
Mamamba has a bit again.
The Mamba had bits again. The qualifying, can I just say? Mwah. Chef's kiss masterclass. Because if you're not familiar, in the GT World Challenge, the qualifying works in a way, in the Endurance Cup works in a way where you have basically 3 parts of the qualifying, and each driver of the car does their like part of qualifying, right? So, and then it kind of gets just averaged out who had the fastest time, basically speaking. And watch the GT World Challenge episode or listen to the GT World Challenge episode where we discuss this in greater detail. However, these 3 drivers, the Mamba, they were fastest in all 3 of the qualifying segments, which you don't really get in GT World Challenge. But it was crazy. They pulled it like straight out, super cool. And then in the race, unfortunately, it didn't go their way, and it was the BMW that won the race. The BMW WRT with Calvin van der Linde, Charles Spears, and Ugo de Wilde behind the wheel. And can I just say, before I, hand the mic to you, Ugo de Wilde, who's now freshly a BMW driver, hasn't the BMW factory driver, hasn't done that many stints, hasn't done that many races in the GT3, drove beautifully at Paul Ricard. Like genuinely very underrated in my opinion, and one of rising stars in GT3 racing or sports car racing, because genuinely impressed. Didn't have that many expectations because he's new, he's young, first factory driver gig, but genuinely very impressed, like hands down.
Wasn't also the first factory gig for Calvin in the BMW as well?
Yeah, in the
It was also
BMW.
his
I mean,
first race with BMW.
yeah, what I was hinting with Ugo de Wilde is
Yeah,
that he's younger and that
new
he never
GT3
did
driver.
any.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's very new to GT3 racing and very new to racing. But yeah,
but
with
like,
Kevin van der Linde,
yeah,
it's first.
especially because the change from the Audi that he's been driving previously, which is a completely different car philosophy. It's a much smaller car, mid-engined V10 to a turbocharged front engine, rear wheel drive, heavy, big, huge, chunking BMW is pretty respectable as well.
Yeah, and just the grid this year, GT World Challenge, guys, it's insane. We got like 56 cars or maybe more, around 56 cars for the first race of the season. Really, really good lineups. Though, if I could say, I think the one lineup that I still think is the strongest that was kind of messed up on strategy and things in the race, but they would have podiumed otherwise for sure, was the Get Speed number 17 of Jules Gounod, previously mentioned, Fabian Schiller, previously mentioned, and Lukas Stolz. I think they're just
Not
a
previously
really
mentioned.
not previously mentioned. If you know, you know. But I still think that they're a really good lineup, and it's their second season racing together, which you can't really say for other lineups because in GT3 the lineups will change a lot, and this is their second season of racing together. And these drivers, because they've been rooted with the Mercedes GT3 program for such a long time, they kind of know how they work, and I think in that way they work so much better together. The same way Maro Engel and Lucas Auer work really great together because they've been racing the same car for God knows how many years. So I think in that way that makes the Get Speed 17 a really strong car. Unfortunately, they finished just outside the points because Jules Gounod was forced to extend his stint, which then went over the maximum amount of time a driver can spend in the car, and they got a time penalty for that, and they unfortunately didn't recover because, as I said, no safety cars. It's hard to recover positions if there's no safety car. But yeah.
Yes, I think this concludes our kind of sum up of everything that has been happening in endurance racing for the past few weeks. Little look ahead to what's happening this week and the following weeks. This weekend, on the Saturday, the 26th, we have the second round of the NLS with a very famous guest entrance with Michelle Getting doing NLS for this weekend. I am not sure which car she's going to be in. But she's doing NLS and probably doing her permits
Porsche
to.
GT4 Cayman.
Oh, cute. Very cutesy. Cutesy Cayman GT4 doing the permits, or I think she already has a permit. I don't know. But
They're working on her. That's why she's doing it, to get her permit.
getting permits for doing probably 24 hours, if we're honest. And after that, in a few weeks, we have the 6 hour of Spa in World Endurance Championship, a race which we are very excited about because both of us will be attending the race and we will have a lot of coverage, very exclusive coverage for this race. So definitely follow us on our social medias on Instagram and on TikTok. And also follow our sister podcast, Everything Electric Racing and Everything MotoGP. Over
Not a
to you.
podcast yet. It's just a page. As of now, Everything Electric Racing and Everything in Moto Racing, MotoGP Racing. Just a sister page as of now, but
Soon
podcast
to be
perhaps soon.
podcasts.
Soon to be podcast, yes. I would like to add that I'm also doing a DTM this weekend, so make sure to check out for that, because despite DTM not really being an endurance series, we're still gonna cover it to an extent because it coincides with endurance racing quite a bit.
And it's easy for us to attend because the races are usually pretty close to where we are located
Yes, exactly.
across the world.
Exactly. And for Spa 6 Hours, make sure to follow us. There's gonna be one episode before Spa 6 Hours, but that it's in 2 weeks, and we're both gonna be there, and yeah, loads of interviews, loads of exclusive coverage. So make sure to stay tuned for that. And I think on that note, that's it. That's life lately in endurance racing.
Thank you very much for listening to this week's podcast episode. We will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.